Hey everyone, welcome. Welcome to another live stream. I know it's been a while, but I'm really excited about this one. Hi Hassan, good to see you. Hassan said he was going to be here, and there he is. Welcome everybody. Before we get started, let me give you make some announcements, give people time to come in. First of all, thank you very much for joining us today. This is going to be an interesting set of sessions, I think. And I need you guys to be there and participate in all that. Some quick channel updates. I started a membership program now. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it a little later. One of my old videos about etymology kind of blew up. I don't know why YouTube picked it up and started putting it in front of people, and all of a sudden I had like tons of people watching and commenting and subscribing. So this is really exciting. It's nice to see that the channel is growing. I mean, I put a lot of hard work into it, and it's nice to see that people are enjoying it and supporting my work. Oh, by the way, if you haven't done so yet, please hit the like button so other people are notified that we're on. I don't quite understand why, but like when you start a live stream, YouTube is supposed to tell people that it started, but sometimes it doesn't until enough people have been watching it and liking it or something. So if you would do that, I'd really appreciate it. During the presentation, sometimes I'll be paying attention to what I'm talking about here, but feel free to chat with each other while I'm talking here, but please follow community guidelines. If you disagree with something, if you disagree with someone, it's perfectly okay. Just be cool, be civil about it. My subscribers are usually wonderful. As I said, sometimes I'll be really focused on the presentation. Every now and again, I take a look at the chat to see if there are any questions, but sometimes I get so into what I'm saying that I may not see your question or comment. If I don't answer, I will give you some time for like a Q&A, questions and answers. You can ask the question again, okay? The more questions, the better. Remember super chats and super stickers. If you look at the buttons below the chat bar, there's a button for you to join the channel. I haven't really used it before, so you just have to trust me. It's a really good way for you to show you support my work. It doesn't matter how much you spend on it, as long as you're showing me some love. I really appreciate it. All of this here, I put a lot of work into it, and any support that I can get is wonderful. Also consider becoming a member and get some perks. This is something that I just started. At first I thought, well, people are getting videos for free, so why would they pay for perks and support and stuff? And I've been very, very pleasantly surprised that I already have a bunch of people joining, and I'm producing some additional materials or extra materials for one of the tiers. So if you're interested, click the join button and just check it out. Really appreciate it. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and all the good stuff. All right. Really sorry I can't see, for some reason I can't see the chat, so let me do something different here. Okay. Now I can see it. All right, Ahmed, Institute for Language Acquisition. That's really cool. Welcome, Ahmed. All right, so we have Ellison, Ahmed, Hassan. I know there are a lot more people, but they're really quiet. Don't be afraid to chat. Okay, so let's just get started. Let me pull something up here. All right, I'm going to get started by giving you guys something to do. So in the chat, can you please tell me what languages you're learning? So what languages are you learning, and for how long? It could be more than one language, or maybe a language that you're focusing on right now. So what language or languages are you learning, and how long have you been learning them? English is a language too. If you're learning English, that's a perfectly fine answer too. So we have French for 10 years, English for a year and a half. Oh, Ellison, you've been learning English for a year and a half, and here you are. And I know sometimes I talk a little fast and all that. You're doing really well. Lebanese Arabic for about 3 years. That's a hard language. I studied a little bit of Arabic because I had a friend who spoke Arabic, and it's a fun language. I love the script, writing from right to left and all that. But man, the verb tenses and all that, it's a crazy language. Roxana, welcome. Hola. Arabic. Give up on English. No, you're here. You can't give up on English. You're here. So you haven't really given up. That was SM. Yeah, the script, Arabic script is beautiful. I love it. Let me put this up. I don't know why I didn't think of this. You can actually see it here. All right, let's move on to the next one. So if you're not learning a language right now, are you planning on learning a new language? And if so, which? Or even if you're already learning a language, are you planning on learning a new one? Welcome, Mary. Gave up on French. Turkish. Yeah, Turkish is a really cool language. The grammar, there are some grammar features in Turkish that are really cool. Arabic. We have a lot of Arabic here. Learn some French for a few months. Yeah, we do that a lot, don't we? We start learning a language, we learn it for a few months, and then for whatever reason, we end up just not doing it. We don't follow through. That's actually one of the topics we're going to cover in this series, is to start learning a language and not stop for no reason. If you start out doing the right things, there's a good chance that you won't quit. As long as you know what you're doing before you even start, you think through some things. Margarita Gancito just Bañado subscribed. You're awesome. That's cool. All right, let's move on. So now this is a big question. Why are you learning? Okay, why are you learning these languages? Like Ellison, why are you learning French? Hassan, why are you learning Arabic? We have different reasons for learning a language. Maybe you don't know why, and that's okay too. From Iran. You just like English. That's a good reason. Sometimes you learn a language just because you like the way it sounds. And actually, I learned a language because of that. I just liked the way it sounded, and I learned it, and we'll talk about it. Roxana, you speak Spanish. Well, Spanish is a good language to speak if you learn English as well. You've covered a lot of territory. Oh, Ahmad, to reconnect with my heritage. Yeah, that's another reason. I'm part Italian, and I've learned a few languages, and I feel really guilty, really bad, that I never really put a lot of effort into learning Italian. And sometimes I feel bad about it because it's like, man, it's part of my heritage. When I was growing up, I had a lot of, adult people that spoke Italian fluently. I just never learned. Agape, greetings from New York. Welcome. All right, so let's move on with the next part here. Oh, yeah, I have a little comment here. By the way, I tend to move my hands a lot when I speak, so I've had people comment on that. Why do you move your hands so much? Well, let's just deal with it. It's just that's how I talk. I'm part Italian. I'm just that's it. Okay, so first, let's do some definitions here so that we know. I'm going to be talking about different things, and I'm going to be saying things. I want to make sure that you understand. So sometimes in the slides, you'll see something like L2. That stands for second language. So when I talk about, an L2, or if you see it in writing, L2 learning, it means a second language. Now, people have some problems with second language when you say, oh, for example, ESL. ESL means English as a second language. They say, well, but some people are learning English as their third language or their fourth language. So in English language teaching, they came up with all this alphabet soup here. For example, ESL stands for English as a second language. EFL, people say, well, you're not ESL, you're EFL, you're learning English as a foreign language. That means you don't live in the United States, you live in a country where English is not spoken, so English is a foreign language to you. So you're an EFL student. Then people say, well, but, so they came up with ESOL, English for speakers of other languages. So it doesn't matter what other language you speak, you're learning English. It's confusing sometimes. EAIL, English as an international auxiliary language. ELF, Santa Claus. ELF, English is a lingua franca. I don't like that term. I don't know why. You can be a LEP student, a limited English proficient student. Okay, to simplify, I will call ESL when I'm talking about English as a second language or foreign language, or if you're living in the United States or abroad learning English, I'm going to call it ESL. Please don't get offended. Otherwise, I have to go through this whole alphabet here. Some people also make a difference between a student, an English language student, or a French student, or whatever, and a language learner. Actually, I kind of like ELL, an English language learner, or a French language learner, or an Arabic language learner, because there's a difference between studying a language and learning a language. You can study as a student, but what if you're not a student? You're not, cracking books open and learning the language, but you're still learning the language. So whether you're studying the language as a subject, or if you're just learning the language because you're living in a country and you hear people, talking to you or whatever. So I'm going to be saying English language learner a lot. Also, I'll be talking about your target language. Even though I am an ESL teacher, I teach English as a second language, ESOL, EFL, or whatever. This session is not just for people who are learning English. It's for anyone who's interested in language learning a second language, or any language as ESL, EFL, ESOL, whatever. Okay, so I'll be talking about your target language. So Ellison said, oh, I'm learning English. So when I say your target language, Ellison will think, oh, he's talking about English. He's talking about my target language. Hassan is learning Arabic. That's your target language, okay? Now, let me tell you a quick story for not just to not just to make a big deal out of my learning languages, but I want to connect my language learning experience to the rest of the presentation. So I'm going to talk about 3 of the languages that I learned, and I want you to pay attention to differences in the situation, my motivation, and how things played out, okay? So Spanish. So I started learning Spanish in high school. It was like, whatever. We have to learn Spanish. I was not emotionally attached to it. It was just, a subject. I had to take a language, and I thought, oh, Spanish is a good one. That was way before I was even a linguist. I wasn't that interested. But then years later, oh, and by the way, in high school, I had a great Spanish teacher, but I didn't learn that much. Uh, then later in life, I got a job in a large school district. I was doing research, and part of the work that I did was to evaluate bilingual programs. It was a large school district that had a lot of Spanish speakers. So I was working there, and I would do classroom observations. I heard a lot of Spanish. I had to understand Spanish. I started talking to people, and a lot of the people I worked with spoke Spanish. And I would just get in there and start talking to them, and they would look at me like, "Oh, you speak Spanish?" And I'm like, "No." So gradually, my Spanish started improving a lot. So I went from Spanish, whatever, to no, I really want to learn this. And I started getting better and better. Today, I don't use it very often. I don't have many people that I can talk to. But I can watch a movie in Spanish. I can, I need the subtitles so I can get all of the details. If I talk to someone, I'll be able to understand pretty much, I don't know, like 95% of what they're saying. And if I don't understand, I can understand from the context. Dutch, I learned Dutch kind of by accident. So I had a friend from Belgium, and she was getting married, so she sent me an invitation, and I went. I went there. I went to Belgium for her wedding, and I went to the part of Belgium where they speak Dutch. I was fascinated by the language. It just sounded so different, and every time I heard two people speaking Dutch, I would just look at them, and it's like, oh my God, this sounds so interesting. This is so cool. So I told them that I was like really interested. I started asking them, how do you say this? How do you say that? And the family, my friend's family, invited me to stay with them, to live with them, while I went to the local university to learn Dutch. As people learn ESL, English as a second language. I was there learning DSL. I was learning Dutch as a second language. The course in the university was okay, but I'd go to class, and then when I came back home, I was living with them. I'd hear Dutch all the time. They had a grandmother living with them, so every time I went back home, I'd go talk to her. Everybody else was at work. It was just me and her, and I'd talk to her. She didn't speak much English. She started talking to me in French, and I'm like, no. So I forced her to talk to me in Dutch. So I learned a lot, and it was just so fun. And the family would get together at night, having dinner, and I didn't know what they were saying. I was just going like, oh my God, oh my God. But after about 4 months, I started really understanding. I was fairly fluent. I was able to have everyday conversations. I was able to read the newspaper with some difficulty. I was like amazed at how quickly I learned it. Okay, because I was living in Europe, I applied for a scholarship in Germany. So I started learning German. I went to university, serious academic German. So I don't know what I was thinking. I had like 3 semesters of German in college, and here I am at university learning German. So the first 4 months, I'd say that I was there, I made a lot of friends. Like it was a very international school in Germany. So I had friends from the United States, from Italy, from all over the world. I would use every language except German. Okay. After about 6 months being there, I started getting so frustrated because I knew German. I knew a lot of German. I knew the grammar, vocabulary, but I knew German, but I couldn't speak it. So I decided, no way. I'm going to change my mindset here, and I started speaking German, and I started making friends. Because as soon as I started speaking only German, even if I was with my friends who didn't speak German very well, I would talk to them only in German. I started meeting people from Germany, started making friends, and I actually made two really, really good friends. And they loved talking to me and teaching me words and stuff and making fun of me and stuff like that. And my German went from nothing happening to, unfortunately, I had wasted so much time the way I tackled it before that when I started speaking it really well, it was time to leave. But it was my fault. I did not do it correctly from the start. Okay, so let's look at what we're doing here in this live stream and how, the story I just told you connects to this. So learning a second language is very complex. If anyone tells you, just get a book and go to school, no, it's more complex than that. There are a lot of individual differences. For example, you have affective factors. Affective factors are things that have to do with your emotions, with your psyche. For example, we have attitudes towards language learning. Some people decided at some point in their lives that, no, learning languages is not for me. I can't do it. So you have a negative attitude towards learning a language, so of course you're not going to pursue it. Or you have a negative attitude towards the target language, positive or negative. So when I started learning Spanish, whatever, it didn't help me learn very much. But when I started changing my attitude and I was like, oh, this is an interesting community. I love meeting people that speak Spanish. My attitude changed and I started learning way, way better. Okay. What is your motivation to learn? So when I was in Germany, the motivation was, ooh, I'm learning German. How cool is that? It's an academic subject. It's really hard, so I want to learn it. Okay. But then when I changed my motivation from that, which wasn't working very well, to I want to make friends. I want to talk to German people. I want to learn the history of a place and, be part of this community for at least the time that I'm here. My motivation changed and I started becoming a lot more successful. Also, your previous experience with learning. So if you're monolingual and you're learning a new language, you have no idea what it's like to speak another language or to learn another language. Okay, so everything will be just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it, right? And sometimes you will learn how to do things that the wrong way. Okay, if you're bilingual, for example, if you speak one language at home and another language out in the world, you're bilingual that way. Learning a new language or speaking a new language is no big deal. But maybe if you learned both languages as a kid and then you're learning a third language as an adult, there's kind of a shock. Oh my gosh, I actually have to study this. Okay, or maybe you're multilingual. Okay, you speak two languages at home and you already learned a third or a fourth language. So learning a new language is different. So the point is each person is different. And you cannot take, when you watch a YouTube video and somebody's saying, oh, this is how you learn a language because that's how I did it. Well, your situation may be very different from the situation of that person, okay? And they're not really taking that into consideration. Doesn't matter if they don't take that into consideration. I want to make sure that you take that into consideration. We're different people. We live in different, we have different individual differences and different life situations. What's your environment? Okay, how much exposure do you get to your target language or to languages in general? Okay, what kind of access or opportunity do you have? Okay. Access could be as simple as, let's say you live, in a small town in the country in the middle of nowhere, and there are no libraries around. You'd have to drive, 300 miles to go to the nearest library. So you don't have as much access, as opposed to living in a large city where you have German clubs and you have Spanish book reading clubs and you have, Arabic, this or that. You have access to things, and access creates opportunity, right? Like fortunately, I had access and the opportunity when I went to Belgium to be with that family. And because I was there, I was able to apply for a scholarship in Germany that I found out through them, actually. I applied and I ended up in Germany for like a year. Not everybody has the same kind of opportunity or access to opportunities. Your social emotional support. Okay, does your family support your language learning pursuit? As an ESL teacher, a few times I've had students come to me. I teach older students, so a few times I've had students come to me and say, "Oh man, I really want to study. I really want to be prepared for class and do better, but when I go home after work, my spouse hates that I'm studying. They want me to be with the kids, and the kids want my attention. So I don't have I don't have support from my family. Other people, the family says, ooh, mom or dad are busy studying, so let's be quiet," and because they're being supportive. So what kind of support do you have? Okay. What kind of social networks do you have available to you that will provide that support? Maybe you don't have it. Maybe you need to find it. Okay. Your learning environment. Again, when people say, "Oh, you can learn a language in 1 month," well, how are they going about it? Do you go to school to learn your language, your target language, or are you doing it by yourself? Like going to YouTube, Snap Language? What resources do you have available to you? What type of exposure do you have? So are you learning your language at home, like you live in the United States and you're learning Arabic? Or do you live in the United States and you're learning English because you're an immigrant here? Okay, so you're learning English where it is spoken. The context can change your experience completely. Bottom line is, there are no excuses. Okay, we love saying, "Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, I don't have the time. Oh, oh this, oh that." There's always a way. Okay, there's always a way. No matter what your situation is, there's always a way. Okay. Week 2, we'll talk about getting the right motivation. Okay. If you're motivated because, "Oh, I'm dating someone who speaks Arabic, so I'm going to start learning Arabic," and then you break up, your motivation is gone. Okay, so you have to get motivated and have the right type of motivation from the start. And if you have the wrong motivation, there are ways for you to identify it and say, "Wait a minute, I'm not thinking clearly here. Let me change that." Or maybe you're doing it for the wrong reason. Stop. And also, just be realistic. You have to be realistic, assess your situation, be realistic, and set goals that you can follow through with. Okay? It's like New Year's resolutions, right? We love making New Year's resolutions. January 1st, "Oh, I'm going to, exercise more. I'm going to eat, more vegetables." And we come up with all these crazy New Year's resolutions. And by, January 5th, you're like, "Oh, I'm a loser." Well, no, you're not a loser. You put yourself in that situation where you set unrealistic goals, set yourself up to fail, and you didn't follow through because, of course not. Okay. So week 3, we'll be talking about setting realistic goals. And week 4, we'll talk about pitfalls, problems. Sometimes you have everything working just fine. You thought it through. You have it all planned out. And something happens that kind of throws a wrench into it. It's okay. We'll talk about these pitfalls, how you can avoid them. And I'll talk about some of the myths that you need to avoid. Okay. For example, you can learn Russian in 3 months. if someone is promising you that, I would question it, okay? Because our brains are not capable of absorbing so much information in 3 months, okay? You can start. No, like I learned Dutch in 4 months, but was I ready to go out and, give speeches in Dutch? No. I was able to have fun, chit chats with my family and friends. And after I left Europe, I continued started studying Dutch, so I kept improving. But it took a long time, and I'm still learning. Um, so why does all this matter to us here, us in this room? Okay, my goal with these sessions is to create awareness of your particular situation. Actually, you are going to do it, not me. I'm going to kind of, guide you a little bit so that you have awareness of your particular situation, and then assess your attitudes and motivations. We don't think about our attitudes and motivations very well until something goes wrong and you go, oh, what happened? Say, well, you had a bad attitude or the wrong attitude and your motivation sucked. Okay. So we're going to question these things. Why should you even learn a second language? And which language should you learn? Uh, can you do it? I'm going to learn 3 languages. Well, do you have the resources to do it? Do you have the time to do it, to put into it? Do you have the physical and capital resources? Okay. Oh, I want to learn, 15 languages. Yeah, you have to buy materials or take classes. You have to spend time doing it that maybe you could be working, doing something else and making money that way. So you have to put all those things in perspective and ask yourself, can I do it? Well, as I said before, no excuses. But before you start doing it, you have to ask yourself these questions. So when you get started, you know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how much of it you can afford to do. Well, this is what I was talking about. Okay, should you even do it? How much investment is involved in learning a new language? Is it worth the investment? Okay, is there an actual need? If you're doing it for your job, or I don't know, you're moving to that country and it would be great for you to speak their language, there's an actual need. So you're more motivated to make that investment. Maybe it's just for pleasure, like the way I learned Dutch. It was just pure pleasure. I loved it. I was there with that family. It was a great experience. Are you doing it just because it's a fad? Because, oh, I saw a YouTube video and this guy was learning, this language. That may not be the best way to go about it. Are you doing it just out of curiosity or out of desire? Well, I started learning Dutch out of curiosity, but then I decided that, this gives me a lot of pleasure. I'm a linguist. At that point, I was studying linguistics already. So I thought, no, this is going to add value to my life. It's not just, a fad. It's not just out of curiosity. It grew out of curiosity into something else. Okay. I didn't know it at the time, though. I know it now. Okay. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. All the people in the room saying, oh, I gave up on French, or I gave up on English, I gave up on this, on that. Be kind to yourself. When you learn a second language, or learning a second language can have positive, long-lasting effects. It gives you a feeling of accomplishment. It makes you want to continue learning more and more. And then you say, hey, I learned this language. I'm going to learn a new one, maybe. Or maybe you'll just continue learning just one language. You may want to continue learning new languages. Okay, but, and that's the sad part, if you go about it the wrong way, and if you follow the wrong pieces of advice, learning a second language can have very negative, long-lasting effects. If you fail, you feel like a loser, right? You have this feeling of failure. Or I started and I abandoned it. I lost interest and I abandoned doing it. And if you do it a few times, you start learning one language and lose interest, and then you start learning another language and lose interest, you start feeling again like a failure, like, oh, I can't follow through with anything. What's wrong with me? And you might decide that, oh, language learning is not for me. Well, it's not that it's not for you. It's that you've been going about it the wrong way, or in a way that was not very, very smart or very fruitful. So in the series, we'll talk about recharging your language learning experience. If you're already learning a language, or if you're thinking about taking up a new one, hopefully it'll help you with setting realistic goals. We're going to look at competence versus performance. Remember when I was in Germany, I was really good at German, but I couldn't speak it. So I was competent. I could take a test in German and do really well, but my performance was horrendous. I had to kind of, switch things around so that I could also, improve my performance. We'll talk about that. As I mentioned, we'll talk about some really bad myths. Snake oils. You have to avoid these snake oils, man. Unfortunately, there is a community of people on YouTube and online that are very well intended. I hate, I'm not like bashing them or anything, because they're doing their thing and they think that they're motivating people. They think they're motivating people by telling them, oh, I learned Russian in 6 months, and now I'm starting to learn my 15th language and stuff. It's great that they can do that they have the time and the and the resources to learn 15 languages, but I think it backfires. It gives people the impression that language learning is this crazy thing where you're going to have to work 20 hours a day on your target language. And I have seen videos on YouTube with people saying, oh, let me show you how I learned 15 languages and in such and such time. And they go through this grueling schedule. It's like I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I read Chinese for 15 minutes, and then I'm like, oh my God, that's all they do. And I think most people will look at that and say, oh my gosh, let me switch channels here because I don't want to have anything to do with language learning. Okay. So they're trying to motivate you, but it backfires. But you don't have to be like them. It's great that they're doing it. And I think they do mean to motivate people to do the same thing, but you don't have to. Okay. So hopefully I'll offer something that's more, middle of the road that most people can follow. We'll also talk about, and that's where, the rubber meets the road, right? How to improve your listening, reading, speaking, and writing skills, and some other stuff. A lot of times, and I've experienced that myself, it's like I'm making so much progress in this language, but my reading sucks. Okay. Now that I've been an ESL teacher for a long time and I started teaching reading, I realized oh, I've been teaching reading for some time now, but when I look back, I go oh, when I was learning German, I couldn't read very well because I was doing all these things that now I'm telling my students, don't do that. Okay. Try this instead. So I want to share what I've learned about improving these skills. So next week we'll talk about assessing your attitudes and motivations. So all of you beautiful language lovers who talked about learning Arabic and English and French and so many other languages, I kind of lost the chat here. Well, have you stopped to assess what your attitudes are towards language learning, your motivation? Maybe you need to rethink some of your motivations. I noticed some negative stuff in some of your answers. Maybe you need to go like, wait a minute, why am I being so negative about learning? Why did I give up on French or English or German or whatever? Okay, and then once you do some thinking about it, you can adjust your strategies and rethink, your mindset, and hopefully change things around the same way that I did it in my experience, like when I was learning Spanish, and then I reoriented myself and did a lot better. German especially, horrible. I had a horrible attitude, horrible game plan. Once I realized that and I switched, I repositioned myself, it just took off. Okay, I want to share that information with you, and also some research information in the area. So the bottom line here is, do not wait for a language teacher or instructor to assess your situation and find solutions for you. Okay, I think in my experience, a lot of times my students are like waiting for me to tell them what to do. Okay, and I do. But I always try to tell them, hey, man, you need to know, you need to reassess your situation, and you need to come up with your own solutions. And then, we can discuss it. I have the experience. I'll be glad to discuss it. But the bottom line is that ultimately the learning part is up to you. When we talk about language learning, a lot of times we go outside of ourselves, right? What is the best method? Who is the best teacher? What is the best book? What is the best way? Okay, you need to get all this stuff and say, what is the best way for me to learn? And the only way for you to learn is for you to put in the work, okay, to have the right attitude, the right motivation, put in the right amount of time, be realistic about it, and you do the work. And if it's not working, you need to stop and think and say, wait, I need to reevaluate something here and find a better way of doing this, okay? All right. Now I'm going to pay really close attention to the chat. If you have any questions, fire away. And if you don't have any questions, I have a question for you. What would you like to improve in your target language? Noor is ahead of us here. So listening. Yeah, we'll talk about listening. How to improve your listening in general. I think for academic listening, a good way to do it is, actually, I recommend my videos. I have a lot of videos that are like really academic. Let me talk about etymology, and I talk about grammar for a linguist and so forth. Watch those videos and take notes, okay? Right, really focus on learning. We'll talk about it sometime in the future. We will talk about listening. What do you mean by interpreting, Ellison? As in translating for other people? I'm not sure I can help you with that. Speaking, yeah. That's a big one. Listening is very passive. You're just taking in information. But then you need to retain that information, learn it, to be able to speak, to be able to repeat what you heard or what you read. And that gets really hard, because then it's all up to you. But there are ways that you can focus your speaking activities in productive ways so you don't get frustrated. I'd like to improve a lot of things. Hassan, don't be negative. Writing, grammar, and comprehension. Well, these are related, Hassan. It's not like, a lot of things. It's writing and grammar, walk hand in hand. And the comprehension, it's the other side of the coin, right? Somebody writes something, puts it on paper, you need to understand. And then for you to discuss it, you need to say it or write it down. So these are very related. When you improve one, you improve the other. We'll talk about writing and grammar in one of the sessions. Watch a video for argument reading. Good. Yeah, those videos. That's how I started, Noor. That's how I started Snap Language. I was making reading videos. And those videos actually are doing really well. People are watching it like crazy. Keep forgetting that I have this chat thing here. I'm sorry. What advice do you have for improving performance so as to sound native-like? Okay, we'll talk about this, Gerardo. First off is don't use the native speaker as your benchmark. Okay, people use that a lot to sell courses. Oh, if you take my course, you will sound like a native speaker. Sounding like a native speaker is not necessarily the best thing for when you're learning a language. You can improve your pronunciation. You can improve your fluency through a lot of practice. Okay, but depending on your language and the target language, and how old you are when you're first learning the language and so forth, it can take a long time for you to get, to keep improving your pronunciation. Okay, let me just give you an example. Like the family that I stayed with in Belgium, they spoke Dutch, but they spoke a dialect of Dutch where they had this r sound, okay? Like, for example, Rome, the city, they would say Roma, Roma, Roma. Very r. I couldn't make that sound. I could not make that sound. It took me years to get to a point where all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, it came out. I can say it. It took a long time. So I couldn't wait until I was able to say, to speak. I just kept talking. So yeah, you can use the native speaker as a goal for the future, but don't get all frustrated because, you can't do it right away. Improve a lot of things. Listening, yeah. Well, when you talk about argumentative listening and being, you can't get all these skills in a language and treat them separately. So you have speaking over here, reading over here, listening. Everything kind of contributes to each other. Writing is the only skill that's kind of outside of the language, because writing is not like a natural thing that you do in language. You can learn a language perfectly well by just listening. You can understand it, you can read it, you can speak it, but you can't write it, okay? Because writing is not something that a lot of people do all the time, okay? It's kind of a special skill. But listening, speaking, reading, it's all connected, okay? But even writing, when you improve your reading, you start improving your writing, okay? Your video helped me in reading. That's good. That's why the videos are there, Noor, so I'm glad that it was helpful. Merci. All right, guys. Okay, what are you now? The big question. I let you guys complain a lot. Oh, my reading, my writing. I want to sound like a native speaker. So the big question to finish this off is, what are you happy about in your second language learning? What are you happy about? Tell me something like, I'm learning French or I'm learning Arabic and I'm really good at this. I'm happy about this. I'm happy about how I'm doing it. Yeah, vocabulary is a biggie. Vocabulary. SM, remember that you spend the rest of your life learning vocabulary in your own language, in your native language. You spend the rest of your life, if you want, you can spend the rest of your life learning, acquiring new vocabulary. And the more vocabulary you have, the more precisely you can communicate, the more accurately you can communicate your ideas. I love vocabulary in any language. Okay, I see. There's a lot of silence in the room when I asked, "What are you happy about?" Ellison, you have to pat yourself in the back because you haven't been learning English for a very long time, and for you to be sitting here listening to me, watching my videos, you're doing really great. You should be proud of yourself for your listening. Keep working on it. It's just going to get better. So Gerardo, is that something you're happy with, getting my message across with people from the target language? Yeah, it makes you feel good, doesn't it? I remember the first time, or at the beginning when I started being able to communicate simple things in Dutch, I was like, oh, I can't believe that people actually understood me. I'm learning French, and I am happy to improve my listening skills. I watch what I can find in French. That's good. So you have a positive attitude, Seth, about, finding your resources, listening to French, and improving your listening. That's great. You're happy about understanding casual English. No. Oh, Hassan, just the positive. You'll work on the academic. Yeah, we'll get there. You'll get there. When we talk about listening and speaking and all that, I'll make sure that I talk about academic English, Hassan. But, you're happy about understanding casual English. That's a big accomplishment. Casual English is not necessarily, that easy because, even though the topics are like everyday things, English has a lot of idiomatic expressions and sayings and things that don't make any sense, but people understand what you're saying. And oh gosh, I blanked out. When you have a verb and like to take in, take on, take out. Those 2-word verbs. Those are really hard, even in everyday conversations. So Hassan, you're doing really well if you're understanding that. All right. It is getting to be. What happened? Something happened, and I don't know what it is. Okay. Camera was turned around. I'm sorry. I want to take a last look at the chat, make sure. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate your being here. It's time to wrap up. It's been, almost 1 hour. Don't forget to do all that YouTube stuff, like the video, share with people. I don't know how many people were here today. I had like 201 in attendance. Some people went in and out, but I know that I didn't give you a lot of advance warning about this coming up, but now I'd appreciate it if you would tell people that you think might enjoy this. If someone missed this one, tell them they can still go to the channel and watch it. And no pressure. You can watch next week, or if you miss it, it's recorded. Please consider supporting the channel by joining the channel. Look at the perks that we have there. The more people join, the more I'll be able to provide. Really appreciate it. And I think that's it, unless I have any hugs from Brazil. Hey, Vinicius, hugs from the US. I lost the gravity. Yeah, I was upside down. Roxana, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Roxana was one of my first channel members. I really appreciate it. All right, guys, take care.